Hi and welcome to this video. My name is Eva. I'm a knitter, a stitcher, a maker and merchant, and this is a chatty video podcast about what I have been knitting and sewing in the month of January 2025. And what a month it's been already and continues to be. I hope everybody is okay out there. So I have been knitting and doing a little bit of sewing this month. So the first thing I have to show you is not actually here anymore because it was a present. So I did a little bit of recording about it before they got sent away. So I'll pop that in here. Hi, I just wanted to record a little bit about these penny mitts because I need to give them to my daughter. She's going to take them away today, so I won't have them to show you on the podcast. So I knit these for a friend of my daughter's who saw the ones that I knit for my daughter and would like a red pair for herself. So what I've used here, and I'll get future Eva to show you the leftovers and what I've got left. I had a 50-gram ball of Drops Flora. I think it was called Crimson. I'll put the number on the screen, and Drops Kid Silk Mohair, so I held them both together, and the mohair is in the raspberry colourway, and I think you might agree that it's very raspberry looking. I really like the colour. So this is the Penny Gloves. I always say mitts, but it's the Penny Gloves by Petite Knit, and at the suggestion of my daughter we've added these fun little bows at the bottom of the mitt. So how I did these was I held both yarns together, I cast 3 stitches onto a 2.25mm needle, and I knit an I-cord for 62 rows, and that was just long enough to make these bows, which I think have turned out quite a good size in proportion to the mitt. I'm wearing it twisted, but it is actually placed centrally down at the bottom, and I think it's a really cute little addition to the mitts. So I always really enjoy knitting these because they're really quick. They just take a few hours to knit up, being DK on 3mm needles. I use double pointed needles, and they're so warm and cozy, and I really hope my daughter's friend likes them. So that was the first project I completed in January, I think, and they're going to wing their way to our friend now. So that's all from me today. Back to Eva of the podcast. So I can't fully remember what I said, but I hope I've covered all the details. But I think I said I was going to tell you about the leftover yarn. So the Drops Flora, if I didn't mention it, it's colourway 18, which was Crimson, and that's a 65% alpaca, 45% wool, and I have got 20 grams left of that. So they're such a great present because 30 grams of that yarn, and with the mohair from a 25-gram ball, I've still got 11 grams left. So they take so little yarn, such a quick knit, and I really enjoy knitting them. So that was the penny gloves of the month. I find that I've got quite small hands and they're a one size only pattern, and they are quite snug when I first put them on. However, they do stretch a lot over time, so I think they will hopefully just stretch to accommodate whatever size of hand you are knitting for. The second thing I have to show you is this. It's my Paulon scarf, which is a pattern by Amy Loudon, which I have finished. I cast this on last January when I first came back to podcasting again. This was one of my first projects. I knit on it throughout that January and maybe into a bit of February, and then aside from that green stripe there, which I knit in May, I didn't really knit on it for the rest of the year, and then I got it back out this January just after Christmas to finish it off, and that was really nice knitting on it during 2 winter periods. It was really like a cozy feeling working on the project. So the pattern from Amy Loudon it's got variations within it, because you can do a scarf, which is what I've done, or a wrap, which is much wider. You can use 100 grams of fingering weight yarn in different colours, or you can use 20 gram minis, and they're all put together with some Surrey alpaca lace as well. I had 10 gram minis. This is a collection of 10 gram minis from Kate Celine Yarns. I bought these all as sort of mystery yarns, where you select a number for a lucky dip parcel, and I did that to provide myself with an advent calendar to open, I think in 2023 it must have been. And I also added 3 or 4 that I could see and choose the colours that I wanted. I very luckily got sent a couple of extra, but I didn't include those, so there are 24 10 gram minis in here. It's a 2-row lace repeat. Let's take it down now so that you can see it up close. Let's pick one of my favourite colours to show you the lace up close. Pink, of course. So it's a really simple 2-row lace repeat. So I did 10 repeats, so each stripe is 20 rows of the fingering weight, and I only had 2 50-gram hanks of the Surrey alpaca, which I got from Chester Yarn Co. It's their undyed base, which I got via Wool Warehouse, and I just did 8 rows of garter between each to separate my stripes. So it's very different to the original pattern in the way that it looks, but I think it's a really lovely showcase for all these colours. And of course they're totally random, because they were just a random selection. I was inspired to knit this because I had these lovely yarns and didn't know what to do with it, and I saw Yana of Finnish Knitting Stories had a nice bright advent calendar, and this is what she was doing with hers, so I thought that was a fabulous idea, so that's why I started to knit mine. I did, and I just sort of made this bit up as well, 24 rows of garter at the beginning and end, just to form a border. When I came to block it, I could only block it sort of to the width of my blocking mats, because I had to put them all in a row, and the garter bit was much wider than my blocking mats, and so I haven't been able to stretch out the whole scarf to match that width. So I just left this slightly ruffled on the blocking mats and just blocked the main body of the scarf to the edges of my blocking mat, if that made sense. So I think this could have actually turned out even wider than it is. I've taken some measurements. It's 17 inches wide, and that's 43 centimetres, and in terms of length it's 87 inches long, which is 2.27 meters, so it's really long. And I had it on here wrapped around once, but I can wrap it around twice, and the tails are still, you know, coming down to cover my front and keep me warm. I haven't worn it yet because I wanted to keep it nice for the podcast, but it was a lovely fun knit. I am such a person that I can't keep complicated patterns in my head. I'm the kind of person where if, say, a pattern says knit 5 rows, I have to say the number of the row I'm on with every stitch, so I literally sit there saying 1 1 1 because it just flies out of my head. So this lace pattern is just a simple number of stitches which is just repeated over and over again, so you don't have to remember different stitches for different rows. So I would say, as a beginner lace knitter, or just somebody who can't concentrate like me, this would be a really good pattern to try out your skills, because it looks really effective, but it's really easy to do. And the Surrey was really a pleasure to knit with, because it's just really soft, and I'm really looking forward to wearing it too. Let's just check if there's anything I've forgotten to tell you about that. Oh yeah, I had 35 grams of the suri left out of 100 grams, so I could potentially have made my little garter stripes a bit longer, but then I think the scarf would have been too long anyway, but perhaps I could have done 10 rows in between each or had bigger borders at the bottom. But yeah, 35 grams left over of that. And from my 10 gram minis, after my sort of 20 rows for each section, I had about 1.3 grams left of each. So have I got the leftovers here? I don't know what happened to the first collection of leftovers from last January, but I've got quite a few left over from what I finished off this year, so perhaps they'll make their way into some stripy socks or something. But yeah, I absolutely can't think what I did with the little balls from last time, so perhaps they've been knit away already. So that's the Paulston. I'm absolutely thrilled with it, can't wait to start wearing it. I think it will be very warm and cosy. So I'll pop that back up here now so we can look at it for the rest of the video. I've done it wrapped around twice now so you can see how long it still is. And I forgot to tell you what I'm wearing today. I'm wearing a Lento sweater by, I think it's by Jonna Helen. It's from Liner magazine, but you can buy it directly off Ravelry either. And there's not much point in me telling you about the yarn because it's a Drops Flora that's been discontinued, so I can't remember what shade it was, and it was just held together with a very similar Drops mohair. Then the other knitting thing I've been doing this month was something that I really needed to get out of my system. I really wanted to knit it, and it was also something that I really needed in my wardrobe. I kept delaying knitting it because I have this constant battle with, I've got so many things that I'd like to knit, and I feel like, you know, I'm 50 years old, if not now, when? So I don't like keep pushing all my projects down the road, but at the same time I have a terrible habit of casting on too many things and then not progressing much with anything. So I had delayed putting this off for so long, but I have cast it on. It's a really quick project. I finished it and I'm so glad that I did. I have knit the Stay Up Till Dawn sweater, which you can again buy on Ravelry and probably Veronica Lindbergh's website, but I got it from this beautiful book, Knit This. Here it is. And I just realised that in the winter I really don't care about putting outfits together and this, that and the other. I just want to throw on a really warm, cosy jumper because I don't like the cold, and just being cosy and snug helps me function. So here is my finished object. I knit this from Drops Wish, which sadly is a discontinued yarn. And I think you can probably see that my collar and the hem ribbing and the cuffs are a slightly different shade to the main body. I had two 50-gram balls of this left over from another project, and then I found out that it was being discontinued, and I'd always intended to buy some more to make a nice chunky sweater. So these are actually the same colour. It's the shade Wheat. Let's see if I've got a ball band. Yeah, colourway number 5, Wheat. This yarn is a super soft mix of baby alpaca, Pima cotton and merino wool. I think you can still get it in various places online, but they're not producing it anymore. So when I bought another 400 grams, so that I had 500 grams total, as you can see, it's a very, very different dye lot. The original ones that I had is much browner and sort of two-tone really, and this one is far more single tone, very creamy beige. So what I decided to do was just use it for the cuffs and hope that that still gave me enough to knit the actual garment. It does take 500 grams, and I was snooping on Ravelry at different people's projects, and nobody mentioned that they had lots of leftovers or anything. It seemed to take the 500 grams, so I wasn't sure. I thought perhaps maybe I'd have to have much deeper ribs to compensate for that. As it turned out, 400 grams was just enough to knit the sleeves and body. I would say that I was probably 2 or 3 rows shorter than where I wanted to be, and so I've done 3 rows extra, 3 or 4 to what was prescribed in the pattern for the ribbing, just to make up the length. And the same for this, I just did, I think, 3 extra rows here, and just also because I liked the look of it being a little bit thicker. It's a double folded collar, so that did actually take 30 grams of the 100 that I had of the darker colour. And I actually knit the size extra small in this pattern. I wouldn't normally be an extra small in any pattern at all, but the reason I did was, even with it being extra small, the recommended ease is approximately 12 to 15 inches. It's massively oversized, and even in the extra small I was still coming up at sort of 12 inches of positive ease. So given that I didn't have any 8mm needles, which is what's recommended, I only had 9mm, I thought, well, I'll cast on the extra small, and then because I've got a bigger needle, it will probably come out slightly bigger. Oh, there's a blackbird out there. But actually the gauge is 11 stitches over 4 inches pre-blocking, and that's exactly what I've got, so it's a good job I used the 9. But even within that, as it's true to size, the extra small is plenty big enough for me. It still feels like an oversized jumper to me, and I'm glad that I did cast that on, because I was also, another factor that played into it was I was a little bit worried about having enough yarn to do the main body in that dye lot. And I wonder why a lovely yarn like this is discontinued, but as I was knitting it, I was wondering if it is sometimes to do with difficulties in manufacturing, because I had a couple of balls of this. Most of them were absolutely fine, but I had 2 balls that were full of breaks and knots, and it's I've got a little bit left over of one of the darker ones. It's like a blown yarn. I presume that the chainette part is the cotton, and then the animal fibres are sort of blown into the chain, and I had several areas where there was a really thick bit of fibre inside the chain, and then the chain would be really thin, so I had an awful lot of wastage that I had to cut out to get over these things. So I don't know whether that's why it's discontinued, because it's hard to make, but aside from that, with the good balls, it's a really lovely yarn. It's very warm. I put this on, I haven't blocked it yet, but I put it on as soon as I had finished it, and I didn't take it off. It was so cozy, so I know that I'm going to be really happy that I've got this now to chuck on a chilly morning. So I will put some footage in of me wearing it so that you can see how long it is and everything, and how the sleeves have worked out. But I would super recommend it. It was a lovely fun project to knit, and I definitely know I'm going to get lots of use out of it. A lovely Patreon member of mine said about knitting one, they'd knit one with different colours and mohair, which I think would be so lovely, because if I show you the other sample in this book, I would very much like to knit a scrappy one, and I had actually been googling to see what yarns could I hold together to make up bulky weight, and it did not occur to me to put mohair in there as well. I think, hi if you're watching, lovely Sharon put mohair with Aran weights to do hers, and so I've got things like that left over from penny mitts, so I think that could be a definite possibility, and isn't that lovely? So I'm definitely adding another one to my list. My list hasn't got any shorter because I'd like to have a stripy one too. So I think that's everything that I can tell you about that, other than I've got 30 grams of the darker ribbing yarn left, and I used 6.5mm needles for the ribbing rather than the 6mm, just because I'd gone up for my other needle size as well, but that worked out just fine. And then the final thing that I have to show you is a mini quilt that I have made. Towards the end of last year, we were decorating our hall, and I've made a little space in there so that I can hang up a mini quilt, and my plan is to make one seasonally. So I'd made a Christmas one, and I've skipped ahead and gone straight to spring because I'm ready for spring now, and I didn't have any plans of what I was going to make other than I had a 10-inch Dresden die cut. I've got a die cutting machine, a Sizzix Big Shot, because I was making hexie kits to sell in my shop for English paper piecing, which I'm thinking of doing again actually. But I bought for myself this big Dresden plate die, so that was my only plan. I was just going to make a large Dresden plate motif and then border it, and that would be the quilt. Wasn't quite sure what to do, but I remembered I've got a couple of Ruby Star expansion packs, and they are just, I think they're about £1 in weight, and you just get loads of strips of, you can't tell what you're getting, it's just a mystery from their manufacturing process. You just get loads of strips of fabric, and I remembered that I had one with daffodils on, and from that has evolved into this. So I cut out 20 blades to make the plate. There's the daffodil fabric, and I actually had it in another colourway as well, so it's not really definitively spring-like other than those daffodils. And it just so happened with sorting through the scraps that I think everything in that pack was from the Reverie range from Ruby Star, and they all just were mostly pinks and yellows, so I went with that, and I love this combination so much. I would say this would be a favourite colour combination of mine, and I cut them all out, and then I could not find anything to make a good centrepiece to cover up where all the points meet in the middle, and so I have a Ruby Star anniversary panel which is just full of square motifs of different sizes. So I started looking through that, and then I found this amazing little guy. I actually feel like this quilt, if my soul was a quilt, this would be it, because I love black cats and I love snacks. I'm really only here for the snacks, so I started to look around for other motifs that would be for snacks, and also just some more sort of filler fabrics that I would never be, because I use these to make things for my shop, but I wouldn't use those as motifs because they're more filler fabrics to me. So I did a mix of motifs and just fillers and hand sewed that together. These are 1.25 inch hexies, and they covered up the hole in the middle just nicely, so I was really thrilled with that, and the colours I think go really well. And then I quilted it on the machine. I must say that none of this is perfect. I'm a real sort of hapless quilter. I don't really know what I'm doing, so none of this is professional standards. So I just quilted around the edges with my machine, and the same just around the edges of the blades. I quilted it onto, this is Essex linen, which is a linen cotton blend, and I just found a random pink and yellow again for the back, and I did a little hexie with some hand stamped just Eva 2025. I used Versacraft ink because that's, if you iron it, that's sort of fixed, then it won't wash away, and I just hand tacked that on. It's what I do is I stitch it down and I keep the papers in, and I left two sides, and then I always make a hole in the papers for my English paper piecing so that I can get a crochet hook in and kind of fiddle them out. It's not pretty, it's not dignified, it's I'm worried about popping the stitches while I do it, but I did manage to get all of the papers out and then stitch down the final two sides. I'm just going to go and get the thread that I use to do the quilting because I think it's really nice and discreet. It's Wonderfill Invisifill and it's in a silver colourway, and I got that tip from the big Dresden quilt that I'm still making, which is a pattern by Melanie Traylor of Southern Charm Quilts, and she recommends this and in this colourway because she says in most cases it really is almost invisible. It's a really good colour to blend in with most things, so I'm ever so happy with it. I have bound it in some more Ruby Star. It's not like I haven't got really crisp 45-degree angles on these because even though I cut everything out bigger than the front panel, when I machine stitched it on the front and folded it over to hand stitch on the back, and it was touch and go on one of the edges whether I could cover the edge of my backing fabric. It had just shifted a little bit, I'm not sure how, and so I had to sort of fold it over just slightly more than it should have been in order to catch and seal the backing in properly. So I feel like it might be a little bit wonky, but again, if my soul was a quilt, I think I'm a little bit wonky as well, so I think it's a nice representation of me, and it does feel very joyful and spring-like, and I will pop some footage in of this hanging up in my haul. Please excuse the wonky light switch next to it. That's on my partner's list of finishing jobs for the haul. He wants to replace the light switch, and so the current one is just hanging off the wall. So I'll pop in some footage now of this in its finished position. Just in case you're interested in the bias binding, well, it's not bias. I cut it on the straight of grain. I cut out 2.5-inch strips and joined them all. I had 1/2 metre of fabric, and from that I got 6 meters of binding for the quilt, so got absolutely loads. I had bought this to bind my bigger quilt of Dresden plates, which hopefully you'll see next month, because I have decided to finish it February. So one of the things on my list to finish is my bigger Dresden plate quilt, but I wasn't sure if that would be enough fabric, so I do need to get some more or make a scrappy binding to bind that quilt. So that's everything that I've made this month. Next month I hope to, oh no, I've got one more work in progress. Next month I hope to finish or at least put the top together of my quilt, dig out a couple of old works in progress to finish, and if I do allow myself new cast-ons, they will just be small, non-urgent things like socks, I guess. So I almost forgot, I did cast on something new last night. It's a little bit awkward how I'm doing it because I've got, I think it's called the Classic Ribbed Beanie, but I'll put it on the screen. It's a pattern by Pearl Soho, a free pattern that I'm sure you've seen lots and lots of people knitting. I have decided that because I'm fully committed to having a buzz cut now, I've just had enough of hair, and so I'm investing heavily in all of the headwear, scarves. I'm thrilled that all these hooded scarves and bonnets are in because I'd like to knit loads of those, and I'd like a few beanies. So this is a bit awkward because all I've got in the way of 3.25mm needles, which is what you need for this DK hat, is this short, I think they're 15cm double pointed needles, and as you can see there is not a lot of leeway on the end of each needle to keep the stitches on. So, and I never work with 4 double pointed needles. I usually work with 3 and the 4th is the working needle, so this is quite weird. I don't know if I will cave and buy myself a short cabled 3.25mm needle, because I'm not sure how I'll get along with this. It's 1 by 1 rib all the way to the top until you start working your decreases. And I've got this beautiful yarn from Indie Yarn Club. It isn't a named one. How I got this yarn, it's 100% superwash merino high twist. And how I bought this was, last year Indie Yarn Club was having a January sale and it was a real super bargain. You got 3 mystery yarns and I think it was like 3 for £40 or something like that. So you didn't know what you were getting, but I feel very lucky to have got this. I think that's fairly true to colour in my screen, but I would describe it as a corally orangey pink. It's almost like a hot pink, but if a hot pink was orange, and I really like it. I'm not complaining at all because this was a super bargain, but I decided to divide it into 2 so that I could hold it together to be DK. And when I was winding it up, I weighed out the first ball to 50 grams, and then I wound up a second ball, and I thought, gosh, that looks really small compared to it, and there's only 35 grams in it. Yeah, I think when I put them both on the scales, it was about 87 grams total. So I'm just slightly concerned that there won't be enough to knit the hat. So I hope that there will be, because I don't want to have to substitute something in right at the end on the top. I think that would be a bit daft. So fingers crossed there is enough there within it to do the hat. So yeah, that's one of my plans for February, although I'm recording this on the 28th, I think, of January, so I could maybe try and make a little bit of progress over the next 2 or 3 days so that I have got a head start on February, on Finish It February. And yeah, I think that's about all from me because I haven't done anything on my shop this month. I think that's all of my making news, and I will be back with you again in February. Stick around for some rare footage of January, and I wish you so much fun with whatever you're making. Bye for now.